Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. And then joining me as we edge closer and closer to the proper NRL season, it's my good mate, Sixties. Big fella, one bag in the game in terms of the preseason trials, one to come this Friday. Plenty to talk about, obviously, but as always, before we get to the footy, how you doing this week, mate?
Yeah, doing really well because we're getting deeper and deeper into these trials, and before you know it, we're going to have round one upon us. That trip down to Melbourne to take on the Storm, I've said before, it's a free shot. I'm really looking forward to it. I know the coaches and the players are really looking forward to being able to take on the Storm in round one. So, mate, yeah, doing really well. And before we go on as well, first of all, our usual shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And also a reminder to like and subscribe our podcast, no matter what platform you're watching on. And John, I had a good bloke talk to me today about about TCT in general, and he was asking me how can he help out in some way, because he said, look, I don't have a business that I can sponsor the Cumberland Throw with, but I'd really like to help out because I love what you do. And he's someone that's fairly new to the site. And I said to him, look, we've got a Patreon. And he goes, have you? And I said, yeah. And I said, trouble is, we don't plug it. And maybe we should, but because I know there are a lot of people that like what we do and have asked me from time to time how they can help out. And I've just sort of casually said, look, we've got a Patreon if you want to. And I know there are some people who have always donated via Patreon, and we should probably acknowledge and thank all those people who support us through Patreon. But if you'd like to support us as an individual through Patreon, you can see that there's a link there on the bottom of our main page and at the bottom of articles that we put up on TCT. So just click there and takes you through, and it's just gives you an option to, support in whatever way you want.
And on that note, I suppose Parallel 60s, given that it is our 10th anniversary, you and I have mulled the idea of getting out some maybe anniversary kit this year for people that would be interested. So I suppose as an expression of interest, if you are a listener or reader of the site, the blog, the podcast, is that something you guys be keen on? Let us know.
Yeah, so just to take that a little bit further, we've been looking at getting some merch together, not just 10-year merch, but the Cumberland Throw merch. And again, I've had people say to me, have you ever thought about putting some merch together? And yes, we have. But we're normally just so flat out covering rugby league that the business side of having a website and or some sort of socials platform where a lot of people do put merch together for their followers, we've just never really had the time to get around to it. But we do want to make this year special, this 10-year anniversary. So if you are interested, if we were to put something together and you'd be interested in buying that, just let us know, because it's something that I'm going to be looking at in the next couple of weeks. Just trying to get something organised before the start of the season so that it's ready early in the season. And if you are interested in it, it just gives me a good idea when I'm getting it organised, just, what might happen in the way of orders. So, just drop us a line, let us know, in the replies or I get a lot of people send me messages through DMs on socials and on the phone and what have you. So, yeah. As John said, just reach out, let us know. John, also, before we jump into the Eels news, and this is really, really important, the Parramatta Leagues Club voting for directors and also voting on the special resolutions to change up the Constitution, get it up to date. That all closes this Friday at 5 p.m. Yeah, all of a sudden, that's it. There it is, the closing date for voting. So if you haven't voted, please do so, because the more people that vote, the more that the election result is representative of the wishes of members. If you're just sitting back and you're thinking, no, everything's sweet, let's, it doesn't need my vote. Yeah, it does. It does need your vote. And it especially needs your vote when it comes to the special resolutions, because those special resolutions to update the Constitution and to tidy it up as well, they require a 75% support. So it's not just first past the post, whoever has the most votes, like it is with the voting for directors. To get constitutional change, you need 75% of the vote going, indicating that they are for the resolution to change. So we're encouraging you to vote for the special resolutions. And as I said, it needs 75% of the vote to be for the special resolution for that constitutional change to go through. So, yeah, just a reminder there. Please vote. Please vote. And just that just about wraps things up from that perspective, John. So let's launch into the news.
News team, assemble!
Now, I'm going to make a little bit of an apology straight away if you hear some little strange sounds, and John's laughing away, and I don't know whether it's come out in the recording. But as soon as the music from our news stinger came through, the pet cockatiels, who are supposed to be asleep, they love music, and it immediately got them awake and chirping away. So my apologies if they decide they're going to be a little bit active. That might be fun when we do a few live podcasts, mate, with those birds. I'll have to make sure that they're either well and truly asleep or I move well and truly away from them. So anyway, Eels news. Mate, I'm going to throw it to you straight away for Team List Tuesday.
Yeah, I wrapped up the team list post for TCT earlier this afternoon, and I sort of I wouldn't say bemused was the right word, 60s, but it's clear that Jason Ryles is keeping some cards close to his chest here. There was an official injury report that came out after I'd finished publishing the article, which clarified a few things, but the Eels are nowhere near full strength this week, and to be fair, neither are the West Tigers. So running through this team list, missing of notable sort of stature is Mitchell Moses, Dylan Brown, Junior Barlaw, Bowie Simonson, Joe Ofengahi, and Dean Hawkins, which means the Eels look like this at fullback. Isaiah Iongi looks to have locked in that number 1 jersey for round 1. That's not a surprise. I know that Joash Papali's done a great job challenging him, but it looks like Isaiah is going to be the first man in the front line there. Sean Russell and Jake Tungor on the wings. Will Penasini and Zach Lomax making their preseason debuts in the centres. Really excited to see both of those players firing up in the back line for the Eels. In the halves, no Dylan Brown, no Mitchell Moses, so that means that Ronald Volkman calls the shots for the second week running. He'll partner up at Twiddle at 5'8". Up had a really good second half against Knights 60s, and this is a great chance for him to steal a march on the likes of Hawkins with this opportunity, so hopefully Arpa can have a big game. Front row, we see Jack Williams making his club debut at prop forward, which is a really interesting call, and really, I mean, we're already pointed towards strongly 60s, but this is like the final nail in the idea that, well, I suppose not nail against, but nail for, the idea that the Eels are going to be much lighter, faster, and agile around the ruck, because Williams, conventionally a back row at Cronulla, is going to be playing front row for the Eels here. He'll partner Wirra McGreg, Joey Lussick getting a start at dummy half. In the back row, same as last week, Gideon Katonga and Kelma Tuolangi starting on the left and right respectively. Jermaine Hopgood back in his first action since doing that job on his back at State of Origin last year, so that's a big boost for the Parramatta Eels. And then on the interchange, Three players making their preseason debuts in Ryan Madison, Luca Moretti, and Matt Dury. Good to see all of them ready to take the field against the Tigers. And then rewarded for his efforts against Newcastle, Sam Tuivasa rounds out that conventional top 17. Extended bench, Tony Mattielli, Charlie Geimer, Bryce Cartwright, Dan Keir, Riley Smith, Brendan Hands, Josh Papali, Josh Addo-Carr, Jordan Samrani, Alpha Miller-Stephen, and Joshua Lynn. So some interesting inclusions on that extended bench in the likes of Brendan Hands, who I was a little bit surprised to see their 60s, and I'm not sure he'll get too much playing time. But Josh Addo-Carr not starting. Ryles obviously looking to prioritise that right wing, or not right wing, but prioritise the wing spot against the Tigers with Jake Tungor starting. But then you also got Dan Keir making his trials debut this year, and then guys like Mattielli and Geimer, who will be right in the mix, but also not in the top 17 for this week.
Yeah, last week, John, I thought that the starting pack with like there'd be obviously a couple of changes, like Junior Paulo, for example, but I think we saw a number of players that will feature in the 17 in that starting pack. This week, I think what we're seeing is numbers 1 to 5 will probably, by my way of thinking, be 1 to 5 in the opening round. Iongi, Russell, Penasini, Lomax, Tungor.
Yeah, there was obviously, and there still is technically, but there was obviously a bit of optimism that Bowie Simonson might be fit for round 1. But with what the clubs put out in their injury report, we're looking at a round 4 return on that ACL reconstruction, which, as I sort of chatted about in my wrap-up for Teamless Tuesday 60s, this does very much feel like it's a pretty feasible interpretation of what Ryles could be putting out there 1 to 5 against the Storm, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then it becomes interesting because we've got neither half playing this week, and you've got a mix of players who are either, I think, are certainties to be in the round 1 team in the pack. Like, I think you can lock in, obviously, Jack Williams. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure you can lock in the 2 back rowers and Jermaine Hopgood. Mm-hmm. And you can probably lock in Matto and Luca Moretti, I think, on the bench. And then you've got other players fighting out positions and players that have been rested this week, like Junior. So what we're not seeing in the list this week is some under-20s players like we saw last week, or some players who are in the Ron Massey Cup extended second-tier deal sort of people, like Samuel Luizio. So it's a real interesting selection this week, John, because you normally in this second week you start to see teams get close to what their starting team might be for mm-hmm. round 1. I don't think we're seeing that at all here with Parramatta, apart from 1 to 5 and then a couple of individuals elsewhere. I think there are spots that are still up for grabs, and I think there are obviously players who aren't featuring in this team list who are being put on cotton wool for
no doubt.
round 1.
Yeah, agreed. There's still plenty to be excited about against the Tigers with this team, especially when you look at guys like Sam Tuivasa getting rewarded for what we saw in the first week of trials. By the same token, though, one player I do feel bad for is Will Latu 60. So I thought maybe he might have snuck onto the extended bench on the back of that really great second half he had down the left edge. But in saying that, no official team list, but we do have a flag trial at 5 o'clock p.m. Saturday and a cup trial at 7 o'clock p.m. Saturday, both of which you can catch on Bar TV. Maybe some TCT coverage there too. No official team list though, so we'll have to figure something out there, 60. So that's where all the surplus talent is going this week. We're going to see guys like Richard Penasini, Araz Namva, Tiankan Brown, Will Latu, Max Tupou, all those players that were part of the setup last week, including Brock Parker as well. Sorry, that's another one that was on the tip of my tongue. So a lot of players that all put in really good shifts against the Knights will be in those two games.
It makes it an interesting timetable for us, doesn't it, on Saturday? Because
no clashes, but it is game to game to game, back to back to back block of war football right there. 3:30 p.m. kickoff in the ball, 5 o'clock in the flag, 7 o'clock in the cup. So we're going to be exhausted by the end of it.
Yeah, if they can move that SG ball up like half an hour to an hour earlier, that'd be ideal, because they're still at Eric Tweedale Stadium, I believe.
Yes,
so
whereas Granville is the Lidcombe, is the option for the other two.
Yeah, so it's it could be beating a very hasty path from Eric Tweedale to Lidcombe Oval. Now, I think I did do that last year.
That sounds right, yeah.
And I think it was a very memorable day that I hightailed it over there, where I think that was the match where the reserve grade were leading by some margin at half time and collapsed against the Warriors. From recollection, that was after, I think, covering might have been covering the girls.
I think it was the ladies
matches.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we might have to do that again, and as I said, it would help. Hint, hint. If that SG ball match could be moved just at least half an hour earlier, I think that gives about half an hour's travel time to get out to Lidcombe Oval. So anyway, interesting times for those of us that try to cover these games, mate. But anything more you want to talk about with the Eels team list?
Looking at the team list here, I'm thinking you're probably going to see an even time share between Lussick and Smith at dummy half. I know that Brendan Hands has been named. I can only see him being used in an emergency. I just don't. He's your number one dummy half. If he's not starting in this trial for the starting reps, then you're probably not playing him. Likewise, at fullback, I don't think Isaiah Young is going to get more than half a game. I think they're going to want to put Joash Papali in there and get him some more minutes, keep that competition ticking over. Neither player's really put a foot wrong in the preseason, which is a fantastic problem to have. But you do want Joash to keep nipping at Isaiah's heels here. Beyond that, really keen to see the guys making their debuts among expected top 17 players. So you're looking at Jack Williams, obviously the two centres, Sean Russell, and then you're going into the bench now, or Jermaine Hopgood too, sorry, but going to the bench where Matto, Moretti and Dury. I think Dury's probably at longer odds to feature week one in the regular season, but I think Madison and Moretti should be there or thereabouts on the interchange. And then extend the roster. You just want to see guys putting their best foot forwards. Matteelli, Geimer, Keir, Riley Smith, Adokar. How many minutes do you reckon Josh is going to get? 60s, because he's not starting and he's not playing to round 3. So the match fitness doesn't go as far here as it would for any other player that's going to be getting that first fortnight of football under their belt. Do you reckon he gets half an hour, half a game? I don't know.
Look, I'd like to see him get half a game, but I mean, you just don't know when you look at such a long reserves list.
Is there an outcome where he just doesn't play against the Tigers? Do you think that's...
No, I think he plays. I think he plays. And what might be interesting is whether they play him on the wing or whether they give him a bit more of a roving role, at fullback or centre. It's I mean, he's now, even if he played the full match in this particular trial, he's still 4 weeks, because he's got the 2-week suspension and the 2 weeks before the season starts. So he's a full month before he actually gets to play his next game of football. So I don't know. I'd like to see him get as much time as possible. But then again, Ryles might be looking at this, especially when it comes to the back line, that he wants them to get at least half a game together as a combination.
Yeah.
And look, I guess in looking at this trial as well, that's the part of the trial that I'm most interested in, is how that back line gels, not just in attack, but also in defence. Now, we saw last week, I thought Richard Penasini did an outstanding job defending at centre.
He did.
His movement in defence was
really clean, great,
really
Great
really good
identification.
footy IQ with that.
Yep, he identified the shape early and would make that good initial first step, so put him in position to succeed defensively. And I suppose Will's been very good at that for most of his career as well. So good to see that footy IQ is in the family. And he also got through.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty, but he got through about 80 metres on the ground as well. So I thought that Richard had a really nice senior football debut.
Yeah, and we already spoke at length last week about Jordan Samrani.
Yep.
So, look, we may as well segue into this because the next thing on our run sheet was the final takes from last week's trial. So let's blend it all in together. I'm obviously very interested to see how Zach Lomax goes. Now, there's an element of that we're going to be missing, which is how he plays out there with the likes of Mitch Moses, because we want to see that Momax, #Momax happening. You've got the interesting halves combination of Ronald Volkman and Arpa Twiddle. Now, Arpa actually had a really, really good trial.
He did
last week. For a fella who's played minimal open age football, I'm just trying to think, has he actually played any New South Wales Cup?
Off the top of my head, I want to say no.
I'm going to say no as well. I don't recall him playing New South Wales Cup last year. My apologies to Arpa if I've got that wrong, but he was really the Mr. Fix-It in the Jersey Flegg last year.
He was.
Played a variety of positions everywhere from in the halves to the centres to fullback, and he was really Mr. Versatility when it came to plugging lots of holes for the Jersey Flegg team. So whereas I think you had players like Josh Lynn,
Ethan Sanders,
got a bit of Ethan Sanders and Muhammad Alamuddin,
yep,
that got a bit of New South Wales Cup time. I don't think that Arpa did. He's had a very good preseason. You could see from his game against the Knights that he's picked up a lot from the coaches during this particular preseason. It was one which he actually, from memory, joined late because he did have an injury towards the end of last season, like right towards the end. He was unavailable, I think, for the last few Jersey Flegg games. Might have been the last one or two games of the year.
Yeah, I think he was replaced by one of the Hunters, I think, at fullback. So
yes. So look, that's an interesting halves combination. Now, how that impacts the rest of the three-quarter line is, we're not going to see the exact form that you might get from having Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown out there, and that's with all due respect to Arpa and also to Ronnie Volkman, because, as I said, both of those fellas had very good games last week. But I don't know that we're going to be able to read a hell of a lot into that. Certainly not in attack. But if I counter myself with what I've just said, you've got Jason Ryles, who's come from a background with the Storm and the Roosters that have strong systems, where players who are called into the team are expected to be able to come in and play their role. And they've been, the Storm are absolute masters at doing that, aren't they? Like they can pull anyone into the team.
Yep.
And the team itself still function like clockwork. And Jason Ryles and his coaches would be attempting to do the same thing with the Eels. So maybe we do get a glimpse of what's on offer with that particular three-quarter line. So, but yeah, I really am looking forward to seeing Zach Lomax in action. I've enjoyed what he's produced during the pre-season. I think you've seen in the interviews how positive he is about being at Parramatta, and that's evident out on the training track as well. He is a personality out there. But he also has an extremely strong work ethic. He's often the last person off the field at the end of the session. He'll be practicing different things, and then he'll finally practice his goal kicking right at the end. But he'll also practice drop goals and a bit of general kicking. So he brings a lot to the table. I can understand why he wants to play centre and why Ryles is going to play him at centre. Like when you see him, I know what he's brought on the wing, and I wouldn't have had a problem at all with him playing on the wing. But when you see what he can deliver, there are times you just want him closer to the action, just that little bit closer. And I think this playing centre will allow him to get that combination with Moses even more. So, he's the player that I'm most interested in seeing. And just touching on when you spoke about Matty Dury before, I still see him as being in that final battle for bench spots.
Yeah, spots 16 and 17 on that bench.
Yeah.
It is fiercely contested. It could be any number of players.
And one of the things, too, that's pointed towards that is that his contract was extended.
Yes, exactly.
During this pre-season.
Jason Ryles liked what he saw.
Yeah, so it's like, in all honesty, there are times when I'm watching training and I think to myself, yeah, I can name the round one team. No dramas. and then I could go to a session the following week and Ryles will actually turn all my thinking upside down with who he's got running around in the NRL team. So, yeah, I think the competition for places is really strong. And, it's been said to me a number of times that Nathan Kalis is going to love having the squad that he'll have at his disposal in the New South Wales Cup level. We always know that injuries and what have you end up tearing the lower grades apart because players have to get elevated to play up in first grade as well. But that could be an exciting team to follow as well, given the number of young players that are there. It seems that in the depth roster this year, that what you have is an abundance of players who potentially have their best years ahead of them, rather than maybe having,
front nine versus back nine in their careers.
Yeah. So, John, is there anything you want to add out of that blend of takes from last week into Teamless Tuesday?
We broke it down on a macro and micro level. I liked the direction the team played with. Yeah, there were some mistakes early on, more so in the third quarter, but early in each half. But the intensity, the speed was there. They didn't show their entire hand, great to see, but all the young guys showed something. We got to see Richard Penasini and Artie Mills-Stephen back after year-long furloughs from injury. And then the extended bench of young guys, headed by Sam Tuivasa, who I thought was very good, Tony Mattielli, Riley Smith, Saxon Pryke, we mentioned Upper Twite, obviously, but Brock Parker, Latu, I thought was outstanding. Josh Lynn, Araz Namva, Sammy Loizu, it was good to see him back on the field scoring a nice try. And then Max Tupu and Tiankan Brown. These are all guys, again, who give the Eels depth in the flag, in the cup, in the NRL. So seeing them buying into Jason Ryles and his system was really encouraging. And then, the fullback battle was really fun. We got to see some positive stuff from Gideon Katonga and Kelma Tuolangi. But with Gideon, I think the big emphasis this week as a sort of wrap-up and also preview on a minor scale here is the ball security, because he looks like he's got the potential to be really damaging on that left edge, but he's got to hold on to the ball. So really liked it. I thought Jordan Samrani got through way more work than I initially read watching that game. And even that, I saw him cop a little of a, not like pasting, but there was some criticism in the game about that one try he let in when the Knights went through him on the edge. And if anything, my initial reaction to that was that I think Josh Lynn doubled the wrong player and took Bryce Cartwright's guy, which created sort of exacerbated the overlap. So even then, technically, I think there was some margin of error there for Samarani. So it was a really good trial, 60s. You can't ask for much more. No injuries, plenty of great tape, young kids flashing. So it was the ideal way for Jason Ryles to launch his career as an Eels coach.
Yeah, just quickly, from my point of view, just to finish up, from that macro level, what I saw was the things that have been worked on in the pre-season were transferred to the footy field. And I could literally see coaching that had been conducted by each of the coaches.
Yeah, manifesting
On the field.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, they could say, look, we've been working on this, and this. What have you shown us? And the players could put their hand up and say, well, we showed you this, and this. So that was the positive. The other, what might be drawn as a negative, but I also think is a positive, is that they weren't perfect. They gave the coaches plenty of content on the tape to look at after the match, some aspects that they could take onto the training track and work on. So if you're talking about a trial, as you said, John, to me, it was almost like the perfect trial because you got a win, which is always good for the confidence, and also fans like to see a win. B, you had, as you said, no injuries. And C, you've got to compare, where you've got to make an assessment of where the team's at based against different opposition than what they face at training. So you got to see them against another team, and there are things that they still have to work on. So when you add all of that up, you go, well, look, this is what we're happy to get out of the trial. Now, what's going to happen this week? Well, we'll talk more in the preview podcast about what will happen in this trial against the Tigers. Honestly, I don't I want the Eels to win. It's not going to surprise me if the Eels lose against the Tigers, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's simply that this is more of a bigger event for the Tigers. They've got the game at Leichhardt. You would think they would have a reasonably big crowd for that. They've got some big names that are playing in this particular game. You'd want them to, or Benji would want them to be making a little bit of a statement for the home fans. How much they want out of the trial, I don't know. But look, I think if we get a win in the same sort of circumstance as against Newcastle, it'll be ideal. If we get a loss, not
the only thing
not
you're looking to avoid is
perfect.
major injuries. Honestly,
That's
the position
it.
that we're in, we know that there's talent in this roster. We know that the coaching staff have implemented some really interesting systems. So obviously you want to see that on the field fit and firing. But the only major concern now is just getting to round one with as many of your frontline options available as possible.
Absolutely. Okay, mate. Well, let's now jump ahead to a review of the junior reps from last weekend.
Ooh, jeez.
Yeah. Look, you covered the insanity. Oh well.
Yes.
And you know what? I have to call it the insanity because it was almost like a mirror reflection of like each grade reflected the other, but it flipped in terms of the result for the Eels. But the way the matches panned out with the late comeback in each game and the heartbreak for the team that was ahead, it was replicated.
Fiction stranger than the truth.
In the mats was replicated in the ball. So I'll leave you to take us through that.
Yeah, so obviously I had the evening block of games there with the mats and the ball kicking off at, I believe, 4 o'clock out at New Era Stadium at Parramatta. And it was the Eels hosting the Sharks in both games. And in the mats, got some flapping there in the background. But the the Eels and the Sharks scored 4 tries apiece, and it was a first-half flurry from Kobe McCloskey that put the Eels in the box seat to win this one. He scored tries in the second, 16th and 19th minute to bag that first-half hat-trick, and none of them were cheapies. The first 2 were on the back of nice backline movements where he had to run and get through contact down that right sideline and score. And then the third one was one of my favourites that you'll see any time of the year when you have a great kick chase on an attacking bomb, and he left the ground, got to the ball first, couldn't reel it in first time, but as he hit the ground, brought it back in on the recovery to dive over and get that hat-trick. So he had a fantastic game. But it was all for naught because in the 56th minute, the Sharks scored. And then from the sideline, Liam Channelov, our captain and halfback, slotted an ice in his veins sort of conversion to get the lead. And that was that. So, again, the Eels probably victims or self-inflicted victims of their own errors, 60s, the mistakes, including that try to Brodie Johnson for the Sharks at the end, coming directly off a Parramatta error. Poor Kasinga Noah, who had a pretty good game up until that point, had an incorrect play the ball or a sloppy play the ball, turned the ball over just inside Cronulla's half, gave them the possession that will lead to the try. So, yeah, I mean, big teaching moment there for both Kasinga and the team. But in terms of our players, 60s, I obviously, Kobe McCloskey had a great game, but the lock forward, Samuel Polly, continues to impress after moving from edge to lock forward. High work rate, great impact. The 2 new players, Riley Davis at fullback and then Parker Perrotto-Darwin on the left wing. Perrotto-Darwin also scored a try for the Eels, the final of their 4 tries there. But I thought those 2 players had nice debuts. But heartbreaking end to the game, and it puts them in, theoretically, they're not really in trouble because it's now a top 8 in the Harold Matts. But it does leave them 1 win from 3 starts and sitting a win outside the top 8, which they should really be entrenched inside the top 8 at this point after getting smacked around by the Roosters in round 2 and then having this one stolen from them by the Sharks. So they got the bye and they got a bit of work to do on the week off.
John, I was, of course, covering the girls' pathways teams at Eric Tweedale Stadium, which just happened to be scheduled at the exact same time.
Yep.
So we had split duties, and the followers of TCT were obviously jumping between the blogs to keep up to date with what was happening in the respective games that were being conducted at the same time. But I have watched the video of the Harold Matts. When I looked at it, mate, I thought that really they were the better team.
Yeah, I agree. They controlled the flow of the game a lot. Just they squandered some attacking opportunities and just that untimely error at the end. It just shows you how thin the margin is for victory sometimes. You can be the better team, but you turn the ball over at the wrong time, wrong place, and it's going to hurt you. Attention
to detail.
Yep.
Really. Yeah. And look, the thing is, we know that, 16, 17-year-old players, they're not professional rugby league players. They are in an elite pathway, but they're going to make mistakes. And that's all part of the learning process as well, is their coaches obviously want them to minimise mistakes. But I think part of the learning process is how they respond to any errors that they make, because Lord knows as they go on their football journey, if they do get to NRL, they're still going to be human. They're still going to make mistakes, and it's how you bounce back from that. And we've spoken before about whether you have the memory of a goldfish or which is ideal, where if you can just put it behind you and get on with the next job. But that learning process also involves seeing how costly a mistake can be at the wrong time.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the Eels learnt that lesson on the weekend. I think the week before, the errors were in such abundance that they learnt that if you make the number of errors that you make in a game that they did against the Roosters, you're going to be punished big time. You're going to get a score put on you. This one was learning about the heartache of when an error could occur or where it might occur.
Yeah.
So, and it's not as if it came down to one mistake at all, but it's a team game. I even look at they allowed the Sharks to score basically in the last minute of the first half as well.
And they're the ones that break your back, don't they? Because it just completely undoes a lot of work that you've done in the first stanza. And I've been reflecting on it too, and I rate Talon Rosati very highly and haven't seen enough of Zayn Alamuddin to make a strong opinion. But I also think that the Eels have been somewhat spoiled in the halfback position in recent seasons, going all the way back. Jake Arthur, Ethan Sanders, Lincoln Fletcher, who's now on the SG Ball. The Mats have just had a long line of really quality halfbacks, and maybe to a degree that's missing right now. Just the cool head that can help win the field position battle. Rosati is a very talented playmaker, but he sort of projects more to that classic 5'8" role. And I think when you get into a projected battle through the middle, not being able to clear the balls effectively does hurt you a lot.
Yeah. So, well, look, it'll be interesting to see how Zane does develop, because I'll tell you what, even though there was a couple of missed kicks, he looks like he's a talented kicker, and I think he's got the physique that he's going to get a bit bigger. And
the kicking is also the hardest part of that game. It's having your kit back.
Yeah. So look, I think in terms of the physicality, there's going to be no problems whatsoever for him. Look, I think the other aspect of that, John, is that was this the first game back for Talon? Or was it the second game back?
Good question. I think maybe second. I have to have a quick gander at that for you. So we just pull up the Mats. Okay, so we got... No, he was there in round 1, and then was he there in round 2? He was. So it's been Rosati and Alamuddin all 3 games.
Okay, yeah. No, I wasn't sure because it might have been...
It was Lorenzo's first game back in the SG Ball, so that's probably where the wire's getting crossed, though.
Okay. So, look, I think what you obviously want is for your individuals in your team to be playing their best football towards the latter end of the season. What we have to make sure for the Harold Mats is they don't slip too far away.
Yeah, you got to keep the wins ticking over still.
Yeah. Now, I also think too that they got out of jail in that first round, and Stephen Nunn, the prop, was instrumental not just in scoring the winning try in that game, but he was a powerhouse through the middle. And I think they've missed him in the last 2 weeks. He hasn't been playing. Now, I don't know what's happening, by way of injuries, but I think they've missed him in the last 2 weeks. He's a big unit, and he takes some stopping, and he's one of those blokes who will establish dominance in the middle of the field. And I think that really does, and I'm not taking away from anyone that's come up to take his place, but when you have someone who can do that sort of damage, then you get, if they're missing, you're going to know it.
Yep.
So look, I think that last week, this weekend just gone, that's the heartbreak loss, because it's one that they should have had in the bag. And, then you could have put that Roosters game back to the well and truly in the rearview mirror and go, okay, that was an aberration. We just move forward. Now they've just got that little bit of extra points that they've got to make up. You don't want them dwelling on it.
No.
But you want them learning. You want them learning their lesson from it as well. So, look, I think the talent is there in the team. I don't know that they need to make any changes or anything like that. I think the players that are out there are capable of doing the job. They've got some great talent in that team. But I would suggest to you that young Stephen Nunn, when he's back, I'll be looking forward to what he will bring to the team. Okay, now the joy. You've just spoken about the heartbreak.
Yeah, so
the joy from the SG ball.
Doing the updates in the match is like, yeah, come on, hold on, we're going to get this, to doing the balls like, oh man, don't see any way we're going to win this. But Eels prevailing 22-18 in this one, with Lorima Rokasuka bagging a crucial double. Wesley Picotti scoring an outrageous try, 60s. The slips hands on that, the chip kick on the attacking goal line by Lorenzo Talatana, and the hands by Wesley Picotti to pick that up off his ankles and score were just, I would have said it was a try of the game if it wasn't for Rokasuka's second.
I was going to say, you just used the word outrageous to describe what happened with Wesley Picotti, but I think, yes, it was outrageous, but it might just have been outdone by Rokasuka.
Yeah, Rokasuka's double, which is what ignited the Eels' comeback in the 64th minute, with 6 minutes to play. The Eels scoring to get within 2 of the lead, only for Lincoln Fletcher, who missed a conversion from out wide. Admittedly, it was on the sideline. They scored from a scrum win centre field. They had a nice little set piece there, actually, with, I believe, Howlett and maybe Talatina behind the scrum, sort of giving options either side. And they broke left to Fletcher, who threw the cutout pass to Rokasuka, who had to tippy-toe up and get it, bring it in, and then dive into the corner in the air, planting the ball full stretch a la Xavier Coates to score. And then from the resultant kickoff, it was the big centre, Anders Johansson, who I thought had a great game, made the line break, put the Eels on the front foot, couldn't find support on the actual line break itself, and chose to take the tackle, not scoring the opportunity, set up the opportunity to go right, where the Eels spread it all the way out to Dom Ferrugia, who sealed the game with a try. Really good effort there from the Eels. A lot of grit and gumption in this one. Sharks threw plenty at them, 60s, but they absorbed a lot. Didn't play the most fluent football, because again there were errors, but you got to admire a team that can show that kind of resiliency to dig deep and find the win, especially after the heartbreak of the week before, where they had the win in the bag and then had to settle for a draw. So some really good mental result there from our boys. I like the work of a lot of players in this one. I mentioned Anders Johansson. Lockie Vella, I thought, was pretty tight at the other centre spot. Lorima Rokasuka, obviously excellent. It was good to see Lorenzo back in the halves. He adds a bit of spark there for sure. And then Trace Beattie on debut, I thought, played pretty reasonably at right edge. Chris Petras very good at left edge. Max Popo continues to impress at lock forward. And this is all without Mason Ong in the mix, 260s, who was an outstanding player in round 1. So really good work from the starting team. The interchange play is good too. Tom Summer, Wesley Picotti obviously scoring a try. Michael Fililava having some big impact off the interchange too. So Eels getting the job done, staying undefeated on the season. Obviously a draw in round 2, but it keeps them in touch with the top of the ladder, where they have I think it's South Sydney, the Bunnies, of course that's South Sydney, the Tigers, and then who was the third team up there? SG Ball, it was the Raiders. So Eels and Roosters still half a win behind both those teams, but very much in the mix for the top of the ladder right now.
I'm going to give you a moment in the game that I thought was critical, and it might have easily been overlooked, but it was the play before Dom Ferrugia scored his try. So there was the crucial decision to take the tackle that was made by Anders Johansson when he burst into the backfield, right? Didn't try to throw a panic pass, just ended up taking the tackle, so he's 10 metres out. Next ball that comes across being centred towards the post hits the ground. Ryder Talangi didn't panic. I think he let it just hit his leg.
Didn't snatch at it, didn't try and make the hero catch. No,
and just secured possession, took the tackle. Now, that was the sort of... It would not be an unusual thing in junior rep football to see an error come from that.
Yep.
Especially in the circumstances, a team that's desperate for that last shot at an attacking play, a forward who's got to bend over and pick up the ball, but he held his composure, and that then allowed them to set, because essentially in taking the tackle there, they were exactly where they wanted to be, in front of the posts. They could go one way or the other. They ended up heading out right, which then fed the ball for Dom Ferrugia to score. But I thought that was actually a crucial play.
It's a good shout.
And a really mature bit of play there from Ryder Talangi.
He had a reasonable game too. I didn't mention him in the players that I sort of picked out there, but he got stuck into the thick of things. And he's in his junior year eligibility here in the SG Ball too.
Yes, and that's important to point out as well. And also, we don't have as much detail on the age of some of the players in the Harold Mats. So, there may well be some players there who are in there who have got 2 years of Harold Mats that they can play, because there are, just as there were the year before, there are players in the Harold Mats team that are backing up for their second year. So they were 16 years of age playing last year, and are now 17 years of age second year in the Harold Mats. Same with this, the players that have been elevated from Mats last year into SG Ball, they're in their first year of eligibility. And when you've got them, holding their place and going well, it augurs well for next year and the future. John, the girls, both teams still remain undefeated. There was quite a few team changes in both teams this week.
Yep.
We saw players given an opportunity that hadn't been playing in the first 2 rounds. And it was, look, I thought the Lisa Fiaola Cup team probably learned a good lesson out of that one, because of the two teams, they were the ones that probably could have put a few more points on the board, but a few errors were there in their game. In fact, I honestly thought they were going to open up that scoreboard in a big way when they jumped out to 28 points to, I think it was 28 to 14 in the second half. That I thought, well, this score might be anything. They're probably going to hit that 40-point margin again. But there were a few errors. Credit to Manly, there was a bit of desperation defence. And Manly ended up scoring the last try of the game to narrow it to a 28 to 20 result. So would they be disappointed with an 8-point margin? Well, look, you're not going to be disappointed with getting a win. But as I said, I think they probably learned a lesson about some of the errors that were made.
Mm-hmm.
So, and look, I get it. There's different combinations that were out there, but it was probably a win where maybe they might have had higher expectations from the result. But look, still a host of good performers that were out there. You're always going to have. Look, I think the halves do a great. I think the spine does a great job. Although there was a couple of new faces there this week. There's the fullback I hadn't seen before, Tegan Nicholas, and she was quite evasive. She has a almost a bit of a loping running style when she gets into full flight. She scored a try herself, but there was also a try that came off her work where she joined into a right side shift, cut back sharply off her right foot. This is not too far out from the Seagulls line, and she was heading. I thought she was heading over between the posts, and then the ball got punched out by a Seagulls defender. And unfortunately for the Seagulls, it just went straight to Bailey Marchong, who then just simply set up a try for Kaysen Morgan Pritchard. Just laid it on a platter for Kaysen to stroll over the line. But look, I think the halves in Withers and Latapu are going really, really well.
Yep.
Withers has a very, very good passing game. And Latapu, I actually like her vision with her kicking game. she put in this kick, this grubber kick, where the last bounce was just a little bit awkward for Freedom, Crichton, and Rapati. But the ball came to her, I think, just wide of the posts. She's looked up. The Seagulls have got this compressed defence. Basically, all it needs is for a good bounce for Freedom to score. And it looked like the bounce of the ball was going to be perfect. And then the last bounce just suddenly went a bit lower and at right angles, and she wasn't able to get her hands on it. But just the vision that she has, and it's not the first time that she's put in a kick like that. So I think she's progressing really, really well.
The back rowers, Cairns and Morgan Pritchard, also impressing again, third week straight where I think they've been pretty ball dominant, and the opposition always struggle to contain them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, overall with the Lisa Fiola Cup, remaining undefeated, but a few lessons that they probably would have picked up.
Yeah, I would say that they're still a step behind the two benchmark teams right now in the Bulldogs and the Roosters, who have been so dominant in the last 2 or 3 years, 60s. But they are one of the only 3 undefeated teams in competition now. So they're doing the right things, and they've still got plenty of time to find that extra gear to take on those 2 teams.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Freedom, Crichton, Rapati doesn't mind a run out of dump.
No, or a good finish down that right sideline.
Yeah,
she is
got a bit of a fend on her too.
Yes, a pretty mean fend through contact. So she's having a great start to this season.
Yes. Now, the Tasha Gale match. Well, we talk about the Lisa Fiola team remaining undefeated. Well, not only are the Tasha Gale team undefeated, they've gone past the 40 mark in each of their games. Mm-hmm. And on the weekend, it was, 9 tries that they scored in their 46-4 win. And again, just like the Lisa Fiola Cup, there were a number of girls there that were given an opportunity in this game. And I think it's fair to say that the girls that did get a shot in this game did grab that opportunity with both hands. So, it was a very, very good team performance. When I was writing up the report for the Eels site, and I think I suggested that the second try of the match, which was scored by Jessamine Alawali'i, might have been the try of the game. Well, I'm then writing up some of the other tries.
The Kalepo try was champagne rugby. That was the one that really stood out to me watching that. That was just the entire right edge and symphony in support, passes inside, outside, everyone backing up, everyone playing great football.
Yeah, the funny thing too about that was that the try scorer there, Matuisha Kalepo, she palmed off one of her own players.
Get out of my way.
Just before she scored, right? And she was talking about it when she came off the field. One of her own players, loomed up in support just before the line, and she obviously thought it was a defender and gave her a palm off.
Equal opportunity fending machine. Doesn't care what jersey you're wearing.
Yeah. And look, she did really well in that because I think she was the player that got the line break. I mean, the combinations were great there, and the backing up that continued. But she then stayed alive to get that final inside pass to be able to finish off the try. So, but yes, it was a great team try, and that's what I was going to say. Is when I was then writing the rest of the report, there were a number of times where I described the team tries that were on show. There's a really high skill level in this team, and for us, when we look back on, because we've been covering and watching Tasha Gale Cup matches basically since the inception of the competition, when it was like 9 or 10 aside.
9 aside out at Cabra,
and it was, it was not pretty, the games back then. It was And with all due respect, there were some girls playing the game who didn't have a lot of football experience, and that's not to say that there aren't girls now that are coming in and excelling who didn't have a long football history before, but there were girls who were actually genuinely learning how to play rugby league, who were playing in the team back then, and the teams that would do really well were those that simply had a lot of touch football players. And because if you've got a limited number of players, but you're playing on a full field, if you've got girls who are excellent touch football players, they're just going to pass the ball out as wide as they can, or get it to a fast player. And it's almost like watching, the old where, when we were kids, there wasn't modified football, so you played on a large field, and the object of the game was get the ball in the hands of the fastest kid in the team. He'd run 15 yards backwards and out to the sideline, and no one else could catch him. And that would be how you'd get your score up.
Yeah.
And it was almost there were aspects, I thought, of when Tasha Gale first started that were almost like that. Maybe not quite as exaggerated as that, but if you had the fastest players, you were going to win. Now, what we're seeing is a game which has developed, which is pure rugby league, where it is skill-based. There are roles there for the power players. There are roles there for the faster players. There are definitely roles there for those with a high football IQ. And I think there is a great mix of that in this Eels Tasha Gale team. I like the way that they combine as a team. The thing that's positive about all of those girls' teams for the Eels is the way they support each other and are keen to learn. The Tasha Gale Cup team, you've got some real power forwards that are there. You've got players that can play that heads-up football.
Yep.
And then you've got that skill level where if they decide they're gonna get that ball out wide, you look at the passes that are thrown to get the ball out wide, and 5-6 years ago, those passes wouldn't have been thrown.
No.
The players weren't capable
They've
of throwing
come along in
passes.
leaps and bounds.
And, and I'm not saying that there weren't players that could throw that, because obviously there's women who are playing in the NRLW who are of that vintage, but not in the numbers that we're seeing now. Like we're seeing, I'm watching this Eels team, and they can all throw a pass like that. And the other thing that's great as well is when you're in the stands watching it, is the girls that aren't involved in the game, how they're not only supporting their team that's out there, but you can hear them talking about what the team's not doing right at any particular time. They'll be telling them, get up faster off the line, watch this, watch that. Like you can see the game, the footy IQ is at a level where there may not be very much difference between the boys and the girls at all. They're really students of the game, enjoy playing footy, and to be honest, it's actually fun to watch. Where it will get interesting is, they've obviously played teams in the first 3 weeks that aren't at the same standard as them. They just aren't. They're not throwing the same sort of passes. They haven't got the power game that the Eels have got. And they might have splashes of individuals out there who can do some of those things. I noted the Manly fullback in I'm trying to think whether it was that game or the Lisa Fiola. It might have been the Lisa Fiola. The Manly fullback in the Lisa Fiola Cup.
Yeah, that's who you mentioned to me on the weekend. Yeah, impressed.
Yeah. She I was impressed with her.
Yeah,
and not not just her work in attack, but she was really clever in defence as well. Like she shut down
a number
the
of
Eels
line
would have
breaks.
scored more tries if
Yeah.
she wasn't out there. So But anyway, look, mate, I'll wrap it up and just say, look, they continue on their winning ways.
Now,
All the teams except for the SG Ball have got a bye.
That's right. So they get a chance to regroup. Obviously, the Gale and the Fiala have plenty of momentum, but the Harold Mats very much need to regather themselves across this week off and find a way to reignite their push, because they're not out of the running by any means. Like I said, just one win outside the top 8. So that's going to be the focus of them. But the SG Ball, they've got to keep on keeping on. They're back at home this week, and I think they're hosting the... Who are they hosting this week? I had it up there just before. Give me 2 secs. In the SG Ball, the Eels are hosting the Rabbitohs. So
that's right.
Big game there in the SG Ball. One of the ladder leading teams coming to town in the Bunnies. In fact, the ladder leading team officially in terms of points differential. So we'll be covering that one on TCT.
Absolutely. And, mate, it's intermission time and time for you to do your thing.
Yeah, look, while the team list might not have been as chock full of stars as we wanted, we're still hungry for the football. And for the Eels playing on Friday night once again, it was a pretty easy pick this week, especially given we've got another week off and then we're playing on a Sunday. So a bit of a classic one here for the football.
Monday morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to nag me. Coming Tuesday, I feel better. Even my old man looks good. Wednesday just don't go. Thursday goes too slow. I've got Friday on my mind.
Going to have fun at the 8th wonder of the world, 60s, with Friday on our mind.
Don't start me on Like Art Oval, mate. Don't start me. But, mate, the easy beats.
Yep.
Right.
Classic. Yeah, it's a classic, obviously for radio and whatnot back in that time, but also one of the anthems of footy too, you know, all week you got Friday on your mind.
Absolutely true. And, look, I love the easy beats, and I will recommend if people enjoy the easy beats, or maybe you've forgotten some of their discography. Big favourites of mine. The one that was a hit actually after they broke up, St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually prefer their version of Good Time to the INXS and Jimmy Barnes one. And if you get a chance to go on YouTube and check it out, I think it's a great version. Well, it's their version. It's their song. So go and check that out. And of course, Vander and Young. What can you say about them as songwriters in Australian music history? They've probably written more songs than people are aware of. In fact, here's a song that they wrote that has been used in rugby league that I bet that people were unaware was written by Vander and Young. And it's a song by Mark Williams, Kiwi, and it's Show No Mercy.
There you go.
And that's actually a Vander Young song. So, big hit for Mark Williams in Australia and New Zealand back in the day. I think it was like the late 80s, early 90s. Vander and Young's song.
Yeah, one of the pioneering bands for international Australian rock. So good listen to these bits.
Absolutely. Okay, mate. Now, NRL news. You're going to jump in. Was there anything at all that caught your eye, or anything you wanted to talk about from round 2 of the pre-season challenge?
Maybe just how lopsided so many of the results were. The only true close game that we had was the Bulldogs versus the Tigers, which was played at Nostrada Jubilee as part of a double header with the Dragons and Roosters also playing. And that was a single score margin with the Dogs prevailing 20-14. But every other result, even the one that appeared close on the scoreboard, wasn't really. Sharks 40-10 over the Raiders. Our Eels pumping the Knights 44-18. The Dolphins absolutely putting the ringers for the Cowboys 50-8. Warriors, and this one was an imbalanced roster. Warriors naming a pretty strong team to Melbourne's reserve grade plus. I think it was Fa'alongo, Stefano Utoikamanu, Who else was there in terms of Melbourne players? Tyrone Wishart was captaining the team. And then like Lazarus Valep, who played in the grand final last year. It wasn't an experienced Melbourne team. So that 36-10 result was kind of understandable. Manly 34-24 probably flatters the Rabbitohs here. They scored 3 late tries, 74 for 77 for 78th minute to narrow that margin. Manly very much on top there. And then perhaps the most damning result of the weekend, 60s, the Broncos 50 over the Titans 12. The Titans had a lot of frontline starters playing 60s. I know at fullback they had Joe on the Groot. I don't think he actually played for the Eels, but it was a one-time Para Pathways prospect. But Jojo Fafita, Philip Sami, AJ Brimson, Kieran Foran, Mo Fodawaker, Sam Verrills, Jamin Jolliffe, David Fafita, Bo Fermor, Chris Randall, Cleese Haas, Isaac Farmer Sula-Awi. I know Isaac isn't his brother, but he's part of that, top/fringe roster here. What's going on with the Gold Coast? And then rounding it out was the Dragons winning comfortably over the Roosters 26-8. But again, kind of as with the Melbourne Storm game, the Roosters probably have more starters starting than I thought. I'm looking at this one now. Dom Young, Mark. I'm sorry, Mark. I just can't get your surname done properly, but their union recruit, Mark Nawana Nita Waze, Sandon Smith and Chad Townsend is their first choice halves pairing with what's available. Nafo White was part of their top roster last year. Spencer Lenu, Sua Wong, obviously thereabouts. So the Roosters not full strength, but they probably have more talent on show than I initially anticipated there.
Yeah. Look, for me, the concerning ones were where you just didn't see any defensive resolve whatsoever. I thought that the Knights had their moments where they were really, really ordinary in defence against us.
Yep.
And that Broncos and Titans game, as you said, there were a number of Titans out there. That if you're a coach, even with it being a pre-season trial, you look at that and there's warning signals about, if you get 50 points put on you like that, because that was put on. A lot of those points were put on when the Titans had, some pretty good names out there, and you just go, well, look, something's falling apart here. Now they might go ahead and prove it completely wrong once the season starts, but you'd still say there's a lot of work that they're going to have to do to get their defence sorted with that. But yeah, they were the main things. Look, I thought from what I saw of the Dragons-Roosters game, the Dragons had some bright moments. I actually thought that Damien Cook might have a new lease of life. He looked a bit livelier out of dummy half than he did at South towards the end of his time there.
Yep.
Did he look a little? Like he just looked. He looked like he had a spring in his step, which, to be honest, I thought had completely disappeared. I thought he was way past the end of his use-by date. But he may well prove us wrong, because at his peak, he was a real threat, especially a running threat out of dummy half. And I thought I saw glimpses of who he used to be in that game. So, but apart from that, not too many takes out of it. After all, it is trials. John, let's jump forward. There's a scattering of re-signings happening across the NRL.
Yeah, today on the day of recording, Tuesday the 18th, we had a trio, I believe, of re-signings across the NRL. Starting with the Knights, they've re-signed forward Brodie Jones. What's the exact details here? So until the end of 2026, so obviously contracted for this year, so it's a 1-year extension. Moving across to the Warriors, where Adam Pompey, the outside back, has re-signed until the end of 2027, so a 2-year extension there for the primary centre there. And then the final major extension, a player that, he was linked very tangentially at one point to Parramatta, if I recall correctly, because we're pursuing outside backs, but Tyrone Munro, 60s, like Pompey, re-signed to the end of 2027, but with the South Sydney Rabbitohs. So the young winger there, who's attracted a bit of attention across last year, and into this season as a bit of a tyro on the wing, staying with South Sydney.
Mate, you know what's strange is when I hear you talk about years like 2027, I keep thinking to
so
myself,
far away.
man, that's a long way in the
Yeah.
future. And then I have to stop and think, hang on, we're in 2025 now.
Yep. The clock is just it's ticking faster and faster. It is insane. Oh God,
Mate, you don't want to be my age when it's starting to tick away fast.
We'll talk about the Tasha Gale 460s, and it kind of launched 2018. Like that's nearly a decade back now, and it still feels like it was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, a little bit of bad luck for a former Eel, Hayes Perham.
Oh, poor man. Yeah, he's up at the Broncos right now, and actually was one of the players in that trial against the Titans when the Broncos annihilated them 50-12. But at training, in the wake of that game, I believe he's done his ACL, and that's just there's no way of saying it nicely. It's just shit for the guy, isn't it? It was really fun watching at Parramatta. Went across to the Bulldogs, got a bit of playing time there, and there's obviously gone up to Brisbane, and I don't think he cracks that back line at full strength, but would have had opportunities across the representative period with the amount of Broncos that get picked for State of Origin, and it looks like he's ruptured his ACL, and I know that ACLs aren't the death warrant on your career that they used to be, but it still is a complete season lost, and then the following season tends to be even if you're playing a rehabilitative season, trying to get back to your best. So a very untimely injury for a guy that I really enjoyed watching go around at Parramatta, and we wish him the best in his recovery.
Yeah, especially if it's a player who's in the middle / back half of their career.
Yeah.
Someone who's really still trying to establish themselves. So it's footy can be cruel at times. I mean, there are players who unfortunately don't even get started because when they're coming through pathways or just starting to hit grade, they have something that an injury that crops up that they just can't get over the top of, and they have to give football away. Shame for any player to have an ACL injury, however, because as you say, that's an entire season out, and even worse when it happens at training. So, and it just shows that those sorts of injuries, they're unpredictable. You just don't know when you just don't know what's going to trigger the injury to happen. So some of them, of course, it's in contact. Other times you see the players just running along and all of a sudden that's it. They're gone. So anyway, we move on, mate. The big question. Are you ready for it? Will Donald Trump turn up in Vegas?
Yes, Peter V'landys appealing to the POTUS, the President of the United States, to come and watch the NRL show at Allegiant Stadium. There's a lot happening in America, regardless of your political affiliation. I'm not sure if the commander-in-chief of the what's it called, the free world, is how they like to label themselves or style themselves, will attend. But as we often want to say, 60s, the worst you can get is a no. So PVL, I sort of salute you for dreaming big. I'm not sure if Donald Trump will be in attendance come round zero, though.
No, but what we are getting is what we had last year, which is the NRL generating headlines. And even if the majority of those headlines are here in Australia, the opening round of the NRL just dominates news, general news, let alone sports headlines at the start of the year. And anything that happens over in America in terms of the market there, or any rebound that happens through other countries, even like England, as a result of this Vegas trip, that's all, a little bit of the icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned, because to me, the big wins happen back here at home with the publicity that it generates. So, but still there's more, John, that we have to talk about. It seems like the WWE are on board with the NRL, and maybe, just maybe, they might be able to get hold of the UFC with the Raiders trying to talk Dana White into getting behind them.
Yeah, so got a couple of competitive arena sports there trying to be affiliated with the football, and I was trying to figure out what the tie-in for WWE was, because Aaron Woods was on their Raw programming, and Michael Cole actually given the NRL plug, and they had Woodsy on as an NRL legend. Legend might be too strong a word, but I've got a bit of a soft spot for Woodsy. He's been pretty good in his post-playing career in the media, so I'll let him have the legend tag for now. He can get away with it. But I believe that the WWE is coming to Australia for their Elimination Chamber, so there was a bit of a scratch my back, scratch your back plug right there. But that's wrestling, it can be a niche market, but it's not a small niche market, and there's probably some overlap there in terms of trying to get interest in another product, so that's not a bad fit for the NRL there. So I salute them for getting a nice little tie-in, and maybe it's an avenue they can explore more in the future too, because the WWE's actually got a few ties to Australia, between wrestlers on the roster on the ladies' side, and then obviously the Elimination Chamber in Perth. So not a bad connection there. And then again, sort of as with Donald Trump before, the worst you can get told is no. So the Canberra Raiders going big with Dana White to blow the Viking horn before kickoff for their game. Yeah, the worst he's going to say is, nah, sorry guys, I'm busy. But at best, you're going to be getting some big eyes from the UFC on your team, on your product. So I don't fault either party there.
Daniel Vito.
Yes, Daniel Vito. I don't think he's with them
still
anymore. I think he's come back. Let me just gander, because I think I saw him. What is he doing these days? He's at TNA right now, one of the smaller competitors with WWE, who I think actually signed on as like a partnership with the WWE. So maybe he'll go back to featuring in WWE at some point.
Yeah, perhaps. But he was certainly one of the pioneers of Australian sports stars going and making a name in the WWE. Mate, I think we're just about wrapping things up. There are a few fines for players like Foran and Martin and McKaylee from last weekend's round of trial matches. I'm not going to dig into those. But what I do want to finish on is we have the news from the team lists this week that Cameron Munster is going to play in the Storm's final trial. And that obviously has relevance because it means that he will be lining up for the Storm against the Eels in round one.
Yeah, strong indication that Melbourne's talismanic 5'8" will be available for round one. And look, our preparations all would have been centered around the fact that he would likely be playing. There's no way that Ryles and his brains trust would be underestimating the potential availability of one of Melbourne's best players. So we just have to be prepared for all the little tricks and gambits that he deploys against this, because he is a hell of a player. Loves his one-on-one strips, loves a very cheeky dummy, and is always up for the competition. So, like I said, Melbourne round one, it's the biggest challenge in the game. But like you said at the start of this podcast, it's a free throw at the stumps. Eels come in looking to end a 2-decade hoodoo for the entire competition, and they've got a bit of momentum right now. So we have to wait and see what happens this Friday for us, and then Melbourne play. When do Melbourne play? Week 3 of the preseason challenge. They are the final game on Sunday, so it's not like it's a short turnaround because everyone's got the week off. But we'll have to wait and see on Sunday how they look in terms of injuries, and we'll have a better idea of the complexion of the round one match for both teams. But right now we worry about the Tigers and just keep not even half an eye, because both eyes on the Tigers right now, and then once Friday's done, we can look at the Storm.
Well, mate, with Ryles being associated with Melbourne, maybe he's the one that's got a few trick shots, seeing that as though he knows those players so well.
That's definitely something to consider. Yeah, I am keen to see if there's any little either trick shots or bit of psychological warfare that goes on and off the field in the lead up to this one and through the game. But that is for a podcast down the road. We've got to get through this instant reaction podcast and preview podcast first. But Jesus, it's good to be talking about Parramatta football on a consistent basis.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. How'd we come in time-wise?
Hour 24. So we still managed to ramble on, but there was that big sort of follow-up breakdown of the first trial, as well as the Teamless Tuesday. So we'll find our stride. Don't worry.
So stay tuned because we will have our preview podcast this week and the instant reaction. So, yes, this is a week where we are in the season mode of 3 podcasts per week. And we might drop back to 1 or 2 next week with all the trials being finished. And then, of course, going into round 1, it will be back to those 3 podcasts because we'll have the team list Tuesday, we'll have the preview podcast, and we'll have the instant reaction for the round 1. So, mate, we're really into the full swing of things. And just a reminder, no matter what platform you've listened to this on, if you can give it a like or subscribe, that really helps us to get the content out to as many Eels supporters as possible. Tell your mates, of course, about the Cumberland Throw. We're in our 10th year, and it's been, we've hit that 5 million visitors mark to the website in the, last month. We're doing about 100,000 site visits per month to the Cumberland Throw. Of course, if you're an Eels supporter with your own business and you're interested in jumping on board and sponsoring the Cumberland Throw, we'd love to hear from you. But of course, we have got Patreon there for individuals who would just love to jump on board and help us out as best they can. And mate, shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, for their support that's been basically through the entire existence of TCT. Shout out to Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels, the place where you'll find TCT in either before or after Eels home games, as we talk to legends of the Parramatta Eels in the club, either talking about the game beforehand or reviewing what's happened in the game. And just a reminder, please vote in the elections for directors. Please cast your vote for the special resolutions that are part of that voting process. It all closes this Friday. Voting online is so simple. It literally will take you 1 to 2 minutes. That's it. So check your emails. You'll have an email from the club if you're a member. It'll give you the link to the site that you can go to cast your vote. It'll give you a PIN number that you can use to vote on that site. And it's as simple as that. It's just clicking the mouse button on the people that you want to vote for, clicking for the special resolutions, and that's it. You're done. Simple as that. So please make sure you vote. Don't leave it to the last minute, because you know that when you leave it to the last minute, you end up forgetting about it. So, John, thank you. Thank you to our listeners, who we just appreciate so much, and all the feedback that you give us. We're really, really, it gives us that motivation every week when we get such feedback. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.